Is it problem?
Thank you very much. Welcome to the June 21st work session of the Lane Community College Board of Education. My name is Rosie Pryor and I am the board chair. And Shane will call the roll.
Pryor.
Here.
So,
Here.
Cross.
Present.
Mike Ister.
Here.
Lee Johnson.
Here.
Lisa Franklin.
Present.
Austin Fulton.
Here, and I could barely hear you. Sorry to mention that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you very much. I have the opportunity to announce that we are going to do an executive session this evening at the conclusion of our regular board work session rather than at the beginning, because we have the pleasure of the company of several members of Lane Community College's choir for a very special reason. They are an award-winning group of people. So before I go to them, let me first say that we typically start each of our meetings with a land recognition, and we will do that this evening. And Dan Collins is going to read our land recognition.
I'd like to start our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to immediately adjust the agenda with the support of my colleagues to call on President Bulger to talk with us about our visitors this evening.
Thank you very much. We are incredibly proud of the LCC choir, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Tinkham to introduce the choir.
Good evening, everyone, board members, Dr. Bulger. I am absolutely delighted to present Matthew Swoboda, our director of our choir. He is going to give you an update on what the choir has been up to. I think you're going to be very impressed. And he will also then present the students. So Matt and the choir, please come on up.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tinkham, Dr. Bulger, esteemed board members. Thank you for that introduction. And come on up, students, behind me, if you would. These are 5 members of the Lane Chamber Choir. And we have Kate here, and Anne, and Ava, and Ben, and Marco. And they are part of our award-winning chamber choir. We've been very busy this year, and I thought I'd tell you a little bit about what we've been up to. In the fall, we had the Willamette Valley Collaborative Choral Festival here on campus, and we had about 500 high school students from all over the region here, checking out Lane, singing with us, presenting programs, and then some of these students hopefully come to Lane. So of course, when we do these kinds of events, it's not just for the music program. Most people aren't even going to be music majors, but if they come to Lane and they are here having a positive experience, we're so proud to be able to recruit. So we did that in the fall, and then we had 3 concerts with visiting high schools this year. So we had in the fall Sheldon High School on a program, and they brought all their families and students, and they got to see Lane. And then we had Springfield High School in the winter, and then we had Lowell High School. So that was another opportunity to recruit for the college. In the winter, I submitted this video that we had made during the pandemic, and I sent it out to all of you. So I hope you had a chance to see it. It was called Back to Zoom Choir. This was, I have to say, probably the hardest thing we've ever done. It's literally a piece we could have learned in 1 or maybe 2 rehearsals, but it took us 10 weeks, literally 10 weeks to put that video together because people were recording in their closets or in their cars, and you can't over the internet sing together. It just doesn't work given lag because of the internet. So not having that choral experience, we took on the challenge. Kate was featured in that video as a soloist, if you saw that, and Kate just sang for us at graduation as well. So she's been doing outstanding work all these couple of years. at any rate, we made this video and we were quite proud of it. Got some recognition for the college on OPB and All Things Considered and that kind of thing. So it was played around the state. And then I sent it into this competition in England and we won first prize. So that was fantastic. We're going to get a thank you. We're going to get some money for that to spend on music, but also we're going to get a commission from a composer who's going to write a piece just for us, which is very special. In the spring, we went on tour. So the whole full choir, we went out to Cottage Grove High School, we went out to Churchill High School, we went out to Sheldon, and we went out to Thurston, and we presented our program, again, recruiting for the college, telling them about Lane Community College, getting people excited to come here, seeing what kind of quality we can bring. So I'm not sure that everybody's always aware of the kind of work we do during the year, but that's hundreds of students and families that we try to reach out to bring to Lane Community College. I'm very proud of that work. It could not happen without these students. I mean, I'm the director, of course, but honestly, I don't make the music. They do. I just help coach them. I also want to say that I understand, Rosie, you've been such a supporter of the choir, and I think, is this your 12th year and you're retiring or stepping down from this position? I know you've been such a supporter. We really appreciate so many times you've sent me back emails or been just supportive of the choir. So we have a special presentation of a piece. It's not the piece that I sent out earlier, but it's a piece called When the Earth Stands Still by Don McDonald. And in this piece, the choir learned to do ASL, American Sign Language, as they sang, which was also one of the hardest things we've ever done, because you're signing in one language and singing in another. And it's not choreography. It's really two languages at once, which is difficult. We sang that piece. We also sang in Tagalog this year, language of the Philippines. We sang in Spanish. We sang in Latin. We sing in lots of different languages and represent lots of different cultures and traditions. That's one of the things I think we're very proud, is to have that kind of intercultural intersectionality in our experience. And last thing I'll say is, choir is one of those places where people are not on their cell phones. They put those all away. They interact as a community where they take a breath together and they try to make beauty together. These things, we grew up in a world that a lot of our students didn't, right? When you had more chances to have community, whether it was in your neighborhoods. Now it seems harder to find that sometimes in our mediated world. I would just want to say that the choir is a special place. It really is this really special place, and we have to preserve those places on campus. So I'm very proud of what these students have accomplished and what we've accomplished this year. So without further ado, if Randy's ready, thank you for helping us, Randy. This is When the Earth Stands Still, presented by the Lane Chamber Choir, and it will be on our website if it's not already, helping to recruit for the college. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Ferguson. I've been a student at Lane since 2019 with a gap year. I just finished my first year in the Music Corps program, which was fantastic. I've been a member of the Lane Chamber Choir since I was a junior in high school. We can hear again. Pardon?
Keep going. I think it was just from.
And then last year, I also participated in the Lane Concert Choir. So there's two choirs. They're both great. Choir is always my favorite part of the day. Even when we were doing school fully online due to the pandemic, I was blown away that Matt could still make choir work. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. It was different. Sometimes it was very difficult, but it was still a lifeline for many of us students, including myself. The Back to Zoom choir that you saw and the one that you just watched now with the ASL was just a small sample of the dedication and skill of these two great choirs. I am so honored to be a part of them.
Hi, I'm Ava Rennick. This is my first year here at Lane in the music program and in the choirs.
Funny dreams last night,
Um,
but I always have weird dreams.
Keep going.
I think this something that stands out to me really about the music program in general, but especially the choir, and has already sort of been said, is the community that we build together. I think that I've just gotten to know so many people that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise. And we all come from different backgrounds and have different personalities or different, like we're studying for different degrees or whatever, but we all come together because we love to make music as a group and just make art that moves people. And I think that's really special.
Good evening. I am Benjamin Hamlin. I've been with the choir since 2019. I've been through the entire music theory program, and I've graduated here with 2 degrees. And like the rest of this group, choir has been one of my favorite classes. In the 3 years, I took a year off for back surgery. But in the 3 years that I've been with this choir, I've sang in I'm up to 11 languages, including ASL, everything from Lithuanian. We tried a piece in Japanese. I don't remember if we performed it, but just so many languages that I've learned, and it's just been a lot of fun. And during the pandemic, choir was my favorite because the times that we did get to meet in the Longhouse, it was those moments that kept me going throughout the pandemic. So I'm very thankful for this choir.
Hello, my name is Marco Liberata. I just completed my first year here at Lane. The choir program has been instrumental, I want to say right off the bat, in kind of keeping me on track, keeping me in college. It was one of the biggest things that I looked forward to every week. And I'm really glad that chamber choir exists because it offered a really safe communal space with a lot of learning, apart from just the fact that like everybody was there, enthused, ready to go. Matt has a lot of passion and it really like rubs off on the students, a lot of joy. And even just technical ability. I went from really doing choir maybe a year online in high school and then sort of on and off for a year my senior year. So I didn't really get a lot of those skills and I felt like I was behind my peers in a way. But coming to chamber choir, I learned a lot of those skills like sight reading, just kind of pitch matching and better vocal ability in general, along with like the bonus of meeting all these wonderful people that show up and really care. So I think the choir program here at Lane is great. It spreads a lot of joy, not only being in it, but performing for others. And I appreciate anybody that's just been supporting this program, and I would do anything to keep it going. I think it's really great. So thank you for your continued support.
Thank you all for being here. And this is an award-winning group, obviously. So congratulations for that. I wonder if any of my colleagues have questions or observations you'd like to make before we let these award winners move on to other important things. Yes.
Well, first, I just wanted to, well, thank you all for being here. And Matt, I just want to say to you two things. One, like, it's just incredible how you've been able to assemble such an articulate group. It's not just the music, apparently, right? There's clearly more going on. So congratulations. And then thank you for your work that you're doing to help position the choir to help recruit. That's that's a serious and important issue that we have here at the college. So I really appreciate that you're pitching in and helping us bring our numbers up.
Any other comments? Austin?
I've been to several choir concerts, and I'm just amazed by the talent of our students. It's truly amazing, and I just want to thank you all for bringing your talents, your time, because both of those things are treasure to our, not only to our institution, but to our community. And I want to thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your contributions. Turning back to our meeting agenda, we're at a spot that says responses to information requests. My observation was that those were all in relation to board policies, were they not? I wonder if we'd like to hold that item until we discuss board policies in case anybody has any follow-up questions they want to ask, if that works for you. That works for all of you, in which case, is there a motion to adopt this evening's agenda?
So move.
Thank you.
You had a second by Holly.
Second.
Thank you, Holly. I didn't hear you, so thank you. Shane, would you call the roll, please?
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Mike Eister.
Aye.
Holly Johnson.
Aye.
Lisa Fregula.
Aye.
Austin Folneggy.
Aye.
Okay, tonight's agenda is adopted. We are moving to discussion items. And do we need to revisit choir, or have we done? We've done it. Okay, thank you. We're going to move to item B, which is board policies. President
Yes.
Bulger?
Yes, Mike Blade will walk the board through the policies for this session.
Somebody that can put the crosswalk on the. Oh, it's Brett. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of a complex. You keep slotting me right after that. That's a pretty hard act to follow. Wow, they were awesome. But I do have good news. I come here today with the last group of sort of going through the policies. We still have policies in shared governance. There's still some 7,000 policies that we may need to bring back, but this might be the last sort of iteration of going through, just going through the list. So
Just to clarify, 7,000 series, not 7,000 more
oh, no,
policies.
sorry, 7,000 series. Yes, no, gosh, no, that would not be good if it was 7,000 more policies. So you've made it, and we've sort of made it, and especially the four of you that were here from the beginning. Congratulations, the other three as well. But anyway, we got 5 policies or 6 policies. No, 5 policies. And do you want me to walk through them first and then get to the questions, or should we start with questions, or how?
I wonder if the board would entertain, do you have specific questions about any one of the policies, in which case we'll address those. I'm confident all of my colleagues have read your information and have read the responses to information requests. So if you have follow-up questions, or if you have questions about a particular policy, Mike?
Board policy 7100, commitment to diversity. I would like to suggest that it's not only diverse candidates that we are hoping to find qualified people for, but for all of our applicants. And so I think we should take the word qualified out of there so that it's not a specific reference to people of diversity. It goes without saying that we want to hire qualified people. And I'm always feel like it's condescending to have the word qualified stuck in front of anything to do with diversity.
Colleagues, comments, questions about Mike's suggestion? Do you want to put that in the form of a motion?
I could.
Steve?
I mean, I think it's a good suggestion, but just wanted to hear if Mike had any thoughts or concerns about that.
Yeah, so we had a meeting earlier this week with Mike and he suggested that very thing. And I have no problem with that. I don't think it changes anything about this particular policy. So I would be totally fine with that. That's the will of the board.
If
Chair-
there's no, go ahead, please.
Chair Pryor, we can certainly make that change before the next regular meeting where action is taken.
And we don't vote tonight. So if there's no objection on the part of colleagues, they'll make that change. Okay, I'm getting head nods going up and down. Are there other questions about other policies? Angela?
On the same policy, actually, and just to say, Mike, I really appreciate that suggestion. I think it's a great one. And thank you for bringing it up. In the information request, I asked sort of in advance about adjusting the equal opportunity language to equitable opportunity. I know that that's not the common phrasing. We usually say equal opportunity, but when I think of equal opportunity, I think of that picture on the bicycles. I think I linked it in the email that I sent. That's like from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. You have to ask for permission, so I don't have it for you. But it's, about the different people getting on bicycles, and all the bicycles look the same. But that's equality, right? But those are, people need different types of bicycles if they're short or if they're tall or if they're differently abled. So anyway, I don't know if folks would agree with that, but I'd like to suggest changing equal opportunity to equitable.
That was also in the questions, and I had no problem with that either.
Okay. Any other policy observations, questions, information request, questions? Yes, Angela.
Others in the questions I was asking in advance, I think around 7,600, but sort of more, I do want to ask this specific question, but I also want to sort of ask if there's an opportunity for the board to really use the equity lens tool as we look at each one of our policies and do the inquiry questions. I know that it's much more efficient to ask specific questions if we have them, but I think that there's value in spending the time. So having said that, I will say, I would really like to suggest that we change reasonable force to the actual definition of that phrase, which is the minimum amount of force necessary. I feel like reasonable force to a layperson, for me, like I had to look it up because I was like, well, what really is reasonable force? And I was like, I want to add minimum to that. And then I looked it up and the definition already includes the word minimum. So what I'd like to suggest is that we simply use the definition rather than the phrase, because I feel like it's more specific and clear, which is the minimum amount of force necessary.
Colleagues? I'm getting thumbs up on that suggestion. Any others, Angela?
No other specific questions apart from my encouragement to spend time with the equity lens on each one of them.
Yes, Lisa.
So Angela, I just wanted to thank you for bringing that up again. I do think it's something that's gotten a little away from us, and I also support the comments that you made that it's something that we should all be taking responsibility for, that you mentioned at our last meeting. I'm wondering if, as we have new board members coming on, if we could potentially have some type of training or conversation all together, because I think it's really important to have those conversations together. I know our new board members are getting onboarded right now. We also used to have these like little, you remember our little hand signs or like our little cards that had all of the prompts on them? I know I still have mine at home. And I sometimes pull it out to help me use the questions. It might be useful for us to have those again. I thought, it was a really great visual. I actually also have it screenshotted on my desktop, so I have it really handy. So I would you know, we have new board members coming on. I think it would be a really good process for us to
Steve,
revisit.
Yeah, as a new-ish board member, I've been here 2 years. I don't think I'm familiar with the cards or the equity lens, inquiry questions. So I would benefit just as much as the newer members. So yeah, I support that.
and the board does have a retreat coming up, which might be the perfect time to revisit some of that. So your new board chair, whom you'll elect at your next meeting, and the president might work on something like that.
All of that is noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, are we wrapping up our review of board policies? Yes, Steve.
Just one quick thing. I was reading what did you refer to it as? Sorry, I'm looking for it here. The responses to information requests, and mostly I think maybe entirely it addressed board policy issues. Just as a general matter of practice, I think it would be useful to attach the names of the person who asked the question. So at least this time around, what I see is, a question was asked and a response is given, and that's great. But it is useful to, I think, memorialize who asked.
We can certainly do that. At
Yeah,
the pleasure of the board.
if it happened in a meeting, that would be noted that way, right? So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very good. I believe we have wrapped up our review. Thank you, Mike, for your consistent help with board policies. And these will appear on your next board meeting agenda in the consent calendar with the suggestions that have been made this evening.
7,000 to go, Mike.
We are moving on to guiding principles for the FY24 adopted budget. President Bolger.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to talk about these guiding principles for the FY24 adopted budget. And the board might recall that the adopted budget was approved by the board unanimously on June 7th. And what we'd like to do tonight, I'm going to turn it over to our interim Vice President for Finance and Operations, Sue Fahey, to introduce this topic. And then we will go into the guiding principles themselves to get board feedback. Sue?
Thank you, Chair Pryor and President Bolger. Would you prefer I go to the podium or is this okay?
If you're comfortable
Work for
there.
me.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. So to begin with, I'd like to recap where we ended with the adopted budget, just to remind folks. So if you recall, the budget was adopted with a $4 million reserve for revenue shortfall. That was primarily due to the aspirational revenue and for enrollment growth assumption of 5%. And then also the budgeted $2 million for the employee retention tax credit. Of that, 3.8 million was reduced from program areas like instruction, support services, things like that. However, no specific reductions were identified at the time. So that leaves us now to identify where those reductions come from an operational budget perspective. In addition, the 23-24 ending fund balance of 2.5 million in the budget is $6 million below board policy of 10%. And the policy requires that a plan be developed to replenish that in 3 years. So I'd like to also take this opportunity to address Board Member Fragala's question about swirl, because swirl are what I normally call turnover savings. Will likely be lower in 23-24 because we've removed positions, vacant positions from the budget. So the best practice is not to budget turnover savings and instead wait until those savings are realized and then transfer budget authority if needed, or in the case of LCC, because their ending fund balance is likely going to be low, let those savings fall to fund balance. So the typical budget process decisions here, as you may recall, they begin about 6 to 8 months before the budget is adopted by the board. And it includes a budget development subcommittee of College Council, which makes recommendations to balance the budget. Well, that process works when you're developing a budget for next fiscal year. Doesn't work so well when the fiscal year starts next week. So every day that passes, once we hit July 1st, costs are being incurred that we're not real sure resources will come in to cover those costs. So the ramification of that is the longer we wait, get operational budgets finalized, the likelihood we'll have to cut deeper, right? So accordingly, we're going to need an expedited budget decision-making process for these operational budgets. So what does that look like? Well, everything's pretty fluid right now because it's all so new, but and we're also kind of navigating through uncharted waters for this college. So what has been asked is that cabinet members develop budget reduction packages or revenue enhancement packages of 6% of their budget. Those packages are going to be reviewed by the cabinet July and August. And then at the end of August, the beginning of September, packages that are going to be recommended to the president will be vetted with directly impacted managers, employees groups, and then other stakeholders. Given that tight timeline we're working under, communication similar to the one that was sent last week, updating employees on what the status is, will be sent in August and September, if that timeline holds. And, you know, the good news in all this, I guess if I could end on a piece of good news, is that given the timeline, as we are making these decisions, we're going to know more about state funding, we're going to know more about ending fund balance, and also fall enrollment. So we'll be able to refine how many packages need to be implemented.
Yes, Mike.
So this is the same question I asked last time. Has anything happened since we last met that sheds any more light on our position?
Well, for me, Board Member Eister, it is understanding board policies and that there's supposed to be a 10% ending fund balance, and we have it at 3%.
No windfall, though.
No windfall yet.
I'll keep asking.
Lisa?
Could you explain that again, what you were saying about the swirl and what was it that you called it?
Turnover savings.
Turnovers.
So when we built the adopted budget, we actually removed some vacant positions this time around. And that, my understanding is that's not typical. So we've already reduced the budget for vacant positions. And as we develop these budget packages, in all likelihood, some of them will involve vacant positions too. And by removing those from the budget, that's going to reduce our swirl or turnover savings by quite a bit.
So, but you said that you should wait until the savings are realized. So what do you mean by wait until the savings are realized?
So best practice in budgets is that you don't know what your swirl is going to be, right? And so until you realize some of that, and as the year goes on, and positions aren't filled or filled with staff that are paid differently, you don't use any of those savings. Does that make sense?
So basically you don't fill the positions until you see some savings.
Yes, you don't use the savings from those positions until they're realized. That's correct.
Just an observation for some in the room or watching who may not know what we mean by swirl or turnover savings. Perhaps you might just define the term.
Sure. So turnover savings occur when employees leave the college, and it takes a while for us to fill the position. It could be the opening that causes the turnover savings. It could be that the newer employees are less tenured and are not paid at the same level as the employees who left. But that's usually what causes the swirl.
So you have a position that's budgeted for a full year, but it's not filled for a full year. So you realize some savings.
Correct.
Other questions, Steve?
Yeah, this the title, right, and the way this was introduced called for some guiding principles. I guess I didn't quite. I heard an explanation of where we're at and such. I didn't quite hear principles.
Well, I'm going to pass it over to President Paul.
If we're ready to move to that, so the board passed a budget, that we are working with and we're grappling with. And this particular budget requires some difficult decisions internally. And so how are we going to do that prioritization that we must do with this particular budget? And so what we have come up with are some guiding principles. And I believe that Brett, if you're there, wonderful. And so these are the guiding principles. We have a bit of a preamble repeating basically what Sue and I have said. And we've got about 8 principles, I think, here. These have all been agreed to by the cabinet. And these are the principles or the guidelines that they would be using in order to create the packages. I'd like to read them, and then I'd like to get board feedback on them, if possible. The first one, minimize a negative impact on the broadest number of students. Reshape the organization using an equity lens and align resources with institutional priorities, fiscal condition, enrollment growth, and institutional culture. Use processes that gain stakeholder feedback on budget balancing strategies. Adhere to collective bargaining contract obligations. Use data and an equity lens to inform decision-making processes. Enact an expedited decision-making process to finalize operational budgets. Use one-time resources such as grants and ERTC, for example, for one-time expenses. And utilize transparent communication internally and externally.
I have an observation I'd like to make. The work that the College Board is about to set on in responding to the budget balancing strategies that President Bulger brings forward in late summer isn't going to be easy. There's going to be a constituent group intensely supportive of every expenditure that could possibly be affected by the work you have to do going forward. I'm struck by the third bullet that says use processes that gain stakeholder feedback. It doesn't say stakeholder buy-in, stakeholder support. I think you'll be lucky to get any of that. But you have an obligation and an opportunity to get feedback. And it's gratifying to see President Bulger is committed to that. I will leave you soon and not help you with this work, but you have my support for the decisions I know you're facing going forward. It's work that we should have been doing all along, and I'm grateful that you're about to undertake it. I just want to remind the board, and especially new board members who are coming onto the Lane board, it's not going to be easy work. You have a hard job to do going forward. I know you'll do the best you can possibly do. I have a lot of confidence in the people on the board and the people going forward. Just want you to realize this is not going to be popular. Mike?
So when Austin and I reviewed this with Dr. Bulger yesterday, we suggested some language that is actually in the preamble, and I'll read the sentence in particular. It is an aspirational budget that may require both difficult prioritization and an entrepreneurial spirit. That was specifically designed to address the point that you raised.
Andelin and Lisa?
Thank you. I agree really largely with these guiding principles. I'm a little bit stuck on the first bullet point where I read minimize a negative impact on the broadest number of students. And I'm thinking of when we look at the data around our students and we aggregate that data, we see, we might look at the broadest number of students and we might decide, okay, this is the way to go. But if we're not looking at students who have been historically marginalized, who are coming from different circumstances, who may have less advantages, I think we may increase the negative impact on already negatively impacted students because they are not part of the broadest number. So I'm not sure what I want to suggest in terms of adjusting that language. I see the equity lens prominently featured, in other bullet points, but I just want to raise that and sort of put it out there for discussion and consideration.
Lisa?
I would be supportive of adding language that recognizes that. And I don't know if anybody has any suggestions, but I agree. Sometimes it goes back to equality versus what's equitable for our students. I was thinking about the expedited decision-making process. And when we were discussing the budgeting process, we discussed having very regular reports to the board about what was happening so that we had more real-time kind of information about what was happening throughout the year. In the expedited decision-making process to finalize operational budgets, I did not hear that the board was engaged in that process, communicated with in that process. I heard that they would be that each department or division
The impacted department.
would create budget reduction packages of 6%. They would be reviewed by cabinets and then reviewed by stakeholders. At what point in the process will the board be engaged?
We've been talking about quarterly forecast updates to the board in November, February, and April. That would be during the year. It will take us some time to move through the process that Sue outlined. And so we think that that November as the first quarterly forecast update would be reasonable for us to present information that we would be confident in. We can also, as I mentioned in the budget committee meetings, that we can also give cash position reports, and there are some other reports as budget to actual reports as well. But the forecast itself will allow the board to see not only what's happening in fiscal year 23, but also 24, but 25, 26, and perhaps even 27.
Thank you.
Historically, the board has always received a written budget to actual report, and that's contained in the information reports that come out every regular board meeting. Steve?
No.
Mike?
One way we might want to consider addressing Angela's point is on the first bullet to just simply take out on the broadest number of and just say minimize the negative impact on students. Because we've got equity lens right under that.
Student.
Just a thought.
Thank you for the suggestions. We're certainly open to other suggestions related to the language there.
Lisa?
When I was meeting with Dr. Bulger yesterday, she mentioned that we would be revisiting this again so that we would have an opportunity to discuss it with the incoming board members. And was that going to be at the retreat also? We're going to be
Yes.
busy.
Yes, you are going to be
You're gonna be
busy.
busy.
We've got a very
You're gonna be
ambitious
busy.
agenda for the 21st and 22nd of July. Yes, for the new board members, these guiding principles would be brought at the board retreat to give ample time for discussion.
Steve?
Yep, I just want to clarify my sort of rough understanding of the process is this board has, approved a budget that, as Sue said, requires, millions of dollars of cuts. And, that is probably the most important point at which we have kind of made our expectations known, right? That with that budget itself. And from there, essentially, by saying so, we've delegated the authority to our president to figure out how best to go about that process. My understanding is you're coming back now saying that, this is that process, that 6%'s been asked from each of the units. And this is the guiding principles that you plan to use to try and, to make those decisions. You plan to make them quickly, keep people informed, et cetera. I think what we're being asked, I'm asking now for your for your clarification in case I'm off, is for the board's role going forward is to take care to make sure that these principles are being adhered to as you as you move forward with decisions. So as Rosie said, we will probably hear from affected staff, right? As you make decisions over the summer and beyond, they have the right to come in and speak at the podium and say, my program is being cut, and here's the ways in which it supports Lane's mission and why it shouldn't be cut. We should expect that. For probably, like you say, for each and every one of the programs that or individuals or however it works, in order for us not to get bogged down with a process that has to happen and that needs to happen quickly, in order to prevent even more cuts. I think what we're being told is that or asked is for us to stick to a review of these priorities when we hear those complaints, and not try and get into the decision making per se, but just to ensure that the process that we agreed to was followed.
If I may, we certainly thank you for that. We certainly want to have the new board, when it's seated, to have an opportunity to take a look at all of these guiding principles. As Sue laid out, the team is starting immediately. We've already had discussions, drafted these principles, have wordsmithed the principles as well. And this is what is guiding our work right now. I would like to, so thank you for both of those comments. It will come back at the board retreat, and the board will have a chance, the new board that's seated will have a chance to take a look at these as well, to get an idea of how we are doing our work. By the time of the board retreat, we will be well along in our work, because that will be about the third week of July, about a month from now. If it's the board's pleasure, I think we can include in the first bullet, minimize the negative impact on students, using an equity lens. And we will do that. We will add that information so that we can ensure that we are including every student who comes to Lane.
Lisa.
So I appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback on this guidance to the cabinet. But at the same time, I think it's really important to remember that this board is not giving up its governing role or its responsibility in terms of providing guidance to the president for decision-making that is given to the Board of Education for the college. We have several policies that direct the Board of Education to make decisions, for example, around the elimination of services or programs at the college. And I would hope that as the decision-making is happening, that the board is continued to be well-informed and continue to be engaged in the decision-making process. I do appreciate, in terms of the budget reduction packages, that it is across the college. Like, what I'm hearing is that it is a budget reduction by department of 6%. And I do think that as we move forward, it's really important that we look at sharing the burden and that across the entire college, and not specifically targeting individual areas for a significant portion of that saving. So I do appreciate that effort.
Mike?
So to follow up on that last comment, I'd like to check my understanding. My understanding is that you asked each department to make proposal. I'm assuming that that doesn't mean that we're going to make across the board cuts. We may choose to make deeper cuts in some areas and even add money in other areas.
Correct. Thank you for that. You're correct. And the 6%, it should provide more than we'll need for packages, so we can make those good decisions based on the priorities and the strategic plan of the organization.
Thanks for that clarification, Mike. But I think what I meant to say is that, or to communicate, is that we're asking everybody to engage in this process as a community. Yeah.
Austin, Holly, Angela, anybody else want to be heard on the subject of guiding principles? Dr. Bulger, do you have what you need?
We have what we need. Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you all. Discussion item D, governance monitoring report. President
Yes.
Bulger?
Thank you. I'd like to ask Kyle Schmidt. Kyle is the chair of the College Council, and he's been chair for a few years. Every year, there's an annual report that, according to a policy, it's BP 325, that we are required to bring to the board. And so this is the report. It's on the college governance system, and there are several items in that policy that we should speak to. And that is what Kyle is going to present today, and I will support him.
Quick correction. Former chair. In the 3 years of college council chair, before that I was on student affairs council as the chair. And before that I was on tech council. And somewhere in there I was also on the governance steering committee that looked at governance redesign. And then there was this whole governance implementation team. So after all that, the president asked me to put this together. And just note, these are my thoughts and comments. This is not the opinion of the governance system. This is my thoughts based on the survey that we gave. So Brett, thanks. If you could go to the next slide. So just a real quick overview and a refresher of what we talked about with governance, the fastest overview you've ever had. There are 5 councils on the system. Their members are appointed to those system via stakeholder groups or are named explicitly in the charter, or their work is so closely associated with the work of that council that the council says, we need you to be on this council doing work with us. The focus of our governance system is on college policy and college-wide strategic planning. We don't want to get into operational details, and we don't ever address implementation. So next slide. As part of this evaluation, we gave a survey. It's based on a survey that ACCT created. We made a whole bunch of changes to it based on feedback from the membership and thoughts from Kathy Thomas, our institution research department. And I want to thank her for all the assistance she provided and that ridiculously huge 50-page PDF that was in your packet, which went into detail on every question. Please enjoy some light reading. Next slide. The first evaluation criteria is on clarity. And a caveat, it's the end of the year. So people have been working on governance all year long. So we're probably seeing better scores on clarity than we would see in September when we have a bunch of new members, because our survey only went to people who were actively involved in the governance system. We didn't want to throw out a couple hundred responses for people who had no idea of what we were talking about because they've never been involved. So this first graph here, I think, gives a good overall view of how people feel. Most people are fairly confident in what governance is, and they acknowledge that there's some parts that they're not as clear on. I want to look at a couple of those places where people weren't as confident. The first was the decision-making process. We have a bit of an unusual or unique decision-making process. I don't think it's the wrong one. I think it does a really good job of building consensus among different groups with different priorities, but it's different. So it takes a little while for people to get used to that. And until you've done this for a few years, you don't see all the different little scenarios that can come up. This is part of why this unique process meant that training, there's a spot in the survey at the end where what do you want training on? And decision-making process was the number one thing. There's also a lack of confidence in understanding what the purview of governance is. That might be partly because there are a bunch of classified people who didn't really understand faculty council because they're not faculty members, so they're not on faculty council. So of course they don't understand faculty council. But that's something we should work on next year, is helping to explain that to everybody. Next slide. I also want to highlight the lack of understanding on the relationship between the board and the governance system. That's come up a few times. And I'm guessing at the reasoning for this one, we didn't, this wasn't a free response server. We didn't ask everybody to give us details on everything. But I think a large part of this confusion has to do with all the changes that came with the new policies the board's been adopting and how those relate to college operational policies. Something else for us to work on in the future. And just a quick overall note on clarity. I think clarity is really hard to evaluate because I can think something is perfectly clear and you can think something is perfectly clear and we can disagree completely. The kind of the textbook example, if you jump back to the internet in 2005, is what color is the dress? Did anybody see it in white and gold? Excellent. It is blue and black. I don't care what everybody else says. Next slide. On wide and explicit communication is the next criteria. A big part of that is communication, and we looked at this extensively in the governance redesign process. And in particular, a lot of those concerns we identified at the time were in communication at College Council. So one way we tried to fix that was by having council chairs serve as members of College Council so that they were involved in conversation all through the year and could bring back information to their council. The other thing we did was add a notice and comment period. It took a long time to implement the details. A little event happened between 2019 and now. But we got there, and we now have a notice and comment process whereby when a policy comes up to College Council, it's first sent to the whole campus for everybody to provide feedback, and then that council can incorporate that feedback and bring it back to the College Council then. It's a little too early to see how well that's worked. We've only passed 3 policies through that process so far, but I'm optimistic and hope that's monitored next year. Next slide. These are all the policies we considered at College Council this year. And you'll notice there's not a bunch, but give you a quick rundown on 5 you might be particularly interested in. BP 5015 and 5020 were sent to General Counsel, and he's going to bring those back next year. BP 3710 and 3715 remain on a Faculty Council subcommittee. BP 3900 remains at a College Council subcommittee. But we haven't forgotten about them. We're working on them. Notice over in the status, all of these policies are at the end of the year. There's a couple reasons for this. Typically, what happens is it gets to be October. We start meeting for the first time. People are still finalizing appointments. Everything really gets going come November. We have our work plans in place by January. We spend all winter term really working on developing policies. Spring term rolls around and suddenly College Council gets really incredibly busy. And as you can imagine, the workload, kind of from fall to spring shifts dramatically. And that's a bit of an effectiveness problem. So we tried to address that. We're changing our work plan process. And now draft work plans are to be created at the end of the year so that when the council starts the next year, they already have something ready. They're working on it right away, and they have to turn it into College Council by November instead of letting that drag out all term. Hopefully that also allows the people who worked on the work plan that year to take part in assessing the effectiveness of that work plan at the end of the year, instead of letting new members the next year guess at what happened the previous year. Also a unique problem this year, as part of the governance redesign process, we reduced the number of councils. We removed 3 and merged a couple, and now we have 5. But we had never gone through all of the policies that we had and reassigned those all, to the proper council. And it took quite a bit of time this year to go through and figure all of those out. This is a one-time thing. It'll never happen again, I hope. But it means that many of the councils waited to really dig into policy work until they knew that, yes, these policies are assigned to us. And we also had a clarity issue around the role of the president in governance, which I'm going to kind of keep hinting throughout the presentation. We'll come back to it. Next slide. So on effectiveness here, we have some graphs. First, do we believe the system works well? And that one and diverse voices were the 2 in this whole category that had the greatest number of voices where people disagreed with that statement. The adherence to Robert's rules, that participants adhere to Robert's rules. We generally try to adhere to Robert's rules, except where there's some explicit differences. That was one of our most commonly needed training items. The president has volunteered somebody's time to help us out with that. And then the last one had a really high number of don't knows. And that had to do with governance implementation plans, the governance redesign process and how we're going to implement that. And it had a large number of don't knows, I think, because there were a lot of respondents who weren't here when we initially did this conversation, and they just need to be brought back up to speed. So next slide. On efficiency, that first one, there was a lot of folks who weren't confident things moved at the appropriate speed. Now, we didn't ask if they thought things were too fast or too slow, but my guess is they think things are too slow. So we've tried to address that in a lot of ways. So first, that work plan thing I talked about earlier, that's going to make things better, right? We incorporate feedback right away instead of having 3 or 4 or 5 readings at College Council. We've added a consent agenda similar to the process for one that's used here. We've reduced the size of our operations manual by 19%. We got rid of a whole bunch of stuff that was confusing. We asked every council to adopt a 5-year review cycle on policies so that we're not doing all of them all at once anymore. We added a bunch of language on how to implement co-chairs on some of the different councils to spread the workload out a little bit and make it a little easier for people to get involved. We adopted the notice and comment process mentioned before. And then over on the right-hand side, again, if you ignore the number of people who are just saying that they don't understand the governance redesign process and only look at the people who disagreed with that statement, I think those, like personally think those people are right. We have not been implementing the work of that. Again, a little thing came up, but it was good work and we should get around to that. Next slide. I see this one is kind of a composite, like kind of like the one question that really gets into the heart of this criteria. How do we do a balancing the timeliness and ensuring everyone is heard? And we're kind of split. So efficiency, again, is a little hard to evaluate this year because we had some one-off things that made it hard. I think at the end of the year, when we were able to put those one-off things aside, we really did a great job at moving through a lot of stuff in May and June. Those are really packed meetings. Student Success Council and Infrastructure Council did some really great work on the policies they were considering, and things moved fast. Next slide. On processes that encourage employee and student participation in problem solving and decision making. People feel like they have an opportunity to talk, which makes sense. This is a consensus driven system. Everybody always has an opportunity to talk. And people felt like meetings and times and agendas were posted. And surprisingly, people said they read them. But that came up in the governance redesign process. There was a concern around there always being a provided note taker, making sure that those are posted. And from where I sit looking at this, yeah, it looks like administrative support from the president's office that's worked out for us. Let's go to the next slide. The concern is around diverse voices being heard in the current governance structure. And this one's a little complicated because nobody gets to say, you know, this is how we should set up the governance system to ensure there's diverse voices here, because each stakeholder group has their own rules for how they appoint people to that process. We talked about this in the governance implementation team, and there was some work proposed around surveying members of the system to understand demographics and just see how well that matches our current population of eligible people. But that work hasn't started yet, but I'm aspirational for next year. I can volunteer them for lots of things because it won't be me. Next slide. Our governance system has a two-tiered process or system where we have these lower level councils that are often composed of a lot of experts on a given area. There's a lot of experts on the infrastructure council around IT and facilities, which is great. They're working they recently did a policy on food and drink in classrooms. They brought their expertise to that. They sent it up to college council, where it's a bunch of people who are not experts in that area, but represent a wider swath of the college. So I think we do a good job of balancing this. These two graphs here, we've looked at these two earlier. These are both things we talked about earlier. There's the decision-making process. Again, I think that's a training need. And then there's some disagreement over whether decisions under the purview of governance take place in governance. There's considerable disagreement about what the word decision means. And we'll get to that in a minute. Next slide. The recognition of support needed for employees and students to participate and contribute meaningfully. This first slide on the left here concerned me right away, but then I got to thinking about it. This asks about if a new employees receive orientation on this. And I got to thinking my experience, no, I didn't receive any orientation whatsoever 12 years ago. And many of the people in governance have been here a long time. You don't tend to see a lot of brand new employees. And my understanding is that this has changed a little bit recently. There's a more involved orientation process for new employees. So I don't think that this particular graph is actually representative of how things are going forward. I also want to point to the third one as one where we might want to discount what that data is saying a little bit. We surveyed at the end of the year only people who are actively participating in governance. So the people who couldn't participate never had the opportunity to respond. So this data likely doesn't actually represent, are people able to participate in the system in a meaningful way? On the middle graph, I'll speak from experience. I ostensibly received 16 hours of release time a month to work on governance council information. However, my coworker retired in December, doubling my work up until last month when we were able to replace her, which has been the best thing ever. So I know there's other people in similar circumstances, and it's difficult, and we need to work on this as a system through the next year. I know with faculty, there are definitely people who would love to participate, and where the co-chairs of faculty council wanted to come to work college council meetings. He couldn't. He had a class. It's difficult to find a time that's going to work for everybody, but again, always something we can work on. Also worth noting is that of all the stakeholder groups, students were the least likely to have all of their seats filled. This has been an ongoing thing. First, it's difficult to get students really passionate about governance, but it's important to make sure that they're all there. It's something else we need to work on next year. Let's go on to the conclusions slide. On that first one, that I believe the current governance system works well, there were not a lot of strong agrees. Only 41% either somewhat or strongly agreed the system works well. So some quick things that based on the data that I saw we should work on next year: clarify the relationship between the council system and the board, improve communication between councils, review and implement the remaining actions on the governance implementation team work plan, clarify decision-making for councils, mostly through training, define the role of the president within governance. This, again, it took a lot of time we spent discussing this. I really think this hurt us on effectiveness. And then we got some things that we want to monitor for next year. Just some of the changes we've made this year. We want to make sure that those are working in the way that we were hoping they would work. Despite all of those things, I really do think that our current governance system is effective at addressing its core mission of work in college policy and college-wide strategic planning. My experience has been that policies and plans that come through the system are generally improved after they've passed through. I know there's some we've made really dramatic changes to, and I've really been impressed with the quality of those changes. So next slide. So my recommendations, and I kind of want to tackle those bottom three first here. And again, to stress, these are my recommendations. I really think it's important for the council system to consider a co-chair for college council. I don't think it's feasible for the college council to be run by one person, especially in light of the way some of the fiscal realities and some of the recommendations that came out of the governance implementation team. I think it's important that the council system figure out how to formalize the relationship of college policy and board policy, and formalize the relationship to the board and how things move back and forth between the two groups. I think it's important that we complete the work of the redesign process. But I also have an ask for you all. All right, we argued a lot this year about the role of the president in governance. And is this a decision-making body where the president participates as a member of the system and uses her, she's there as part of it, she can block consensus, and she uses that to ensure that the council system never lands on a decision that she can't follow? Or is this a recommendation system where the governance system comes together, we reach a recommendation, we send it to the president's office, and the president can choose to accept that recommendation, and should most of the time, because you'd expect, it's a long decision involving a lot of people, represents a lot of wisdom, but isn't necessarily bound by the decision from that council. My recommendation would be that you codify that in BP 325 in some way, because both groups look at that policy and they see their vision crystal clear. So any questions for me?
Lisa?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Kyle. I had looked at the slideshow previously, but your comments enriched it very, very much, and I appreciate that. And thank you for your service. I know it's a tremendous amount of work leading the system, the college, in addition to your job. So I'm really curious what you mentioned about the governance redesign process. And so from what you were commenting, it sounds like I know that was a really long process. It was a couple of years, but it sounds like the recommendations and changes that were adopted have not been implemented, or some of them. Could you clarify that?
Yeah, it's been, some of them have been implemented. For instance, bringing council chairs onto the college council was one, adding a notice and comment was another one, providing administrative support was another one. However, there were also a whole bunch of recommendations, off the top of my head, a bunch on training, which we have not implemented. So I'd say maybe 40 to 50% implemented, but I'm guessing there.
Okay, and so is that something that the college council is going to continue to work on in the coming year?
In my conversations with some of the members who will be there next year, that is one of the things they hope to work on.
Okay.
Austin, and then Steve.
You were mentioning student participation is low. Can you just a few questions in regards to that? Is the meetings held in person, Zoom, hybrid? Just wanted to get a clarification on that.
All meetings have been hybrid this year.
Okay, fantastic, cool. But it looks like they participate in the survey. It looks like, okay, in regards to with the role, it was like is it somewhat not, and so forth. So it looks like they participate in the survey, which is good. But I also what is like timeframes of these meetings? Would we say that it has kind of more of a student-centric or an employee-centric time periods in which they meet? Has things like that been discussed as far as like with students' attendance?
A little bit. I mean, student schedules are all over the place. Our meetings tend to run about 2 hours once a month. I don't know that I qualified to say if they align at the with student schedule times. I don't recall any conversation with if that meets everybody's schedule. Or if it's student-centric or employee-centric. Yeah.
Okay, understood. Thank you. And yeah, obviously we want students there. They are a major stakeholder of this institution. Thank you.
And while they did a good job filling out the survey, the danger was we only had 6 of 11 student seats filled this year.
Okay, you got you. So it's actually the filling of those seats, not necessarily the attendance of the students that were in those seats. 10-4.
Right.
Thank you for that
Yeah.
clarification.
Steve?
So Kyle, first I wanted to thank you for sharing your survey instrument and the results and all of that's very helpful. It gives me a much better sense of, how to think about it when I see the response rate, et cetera. Thank you for doing that. So you mentioned at the end policy, I didn't catch the number 320 something or other. You were strongly recommending that we weigh in on that as to whether or not, governance from the College Council are, in the form of recommendations or actual decisions. And I agree that if people really, if that's somehow not clear to folks, some people see it one way, some people see it another. We certainly, I think, are obligated to clarify that because that's such a huge distinction. Since you're no longer on the council and you've weighed in other kinds of ways and you've made it very clear that these thoughts are yours and don't represent the council at large, not necessarily in any case. Do you care to give us your thoughts on how you see this and what would be most useful for the institution?
We talked a lot about how things were created and what historic documents read and whatnot. And I don't think that's the right question anymore. It's really about what's the best path forward for the institution. And personally, I'd consider neither a decision or a recommendation model and would consider a veto model.
Can you just explain that a little bit more, how a veto is different from recommendation?
Sure. Under a recommendation, you hand it to the president and she can say, yes, I'm going to do this. Or she can say, no, I'm going to send it back to the council. Or she can say, no, I'm going to do something completely different. Under a veto model, it's yes, I'm going to do this, or no, I'm sending this back for further consideration.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, you mentioned that the survey, well, first of all, thank you for the thorough report. It was very high quality. Appreciate that. That it was an ACCT survey, and I'm wondering if there's benchmark data that we might use to compare ourselves.
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. And
Okay.
that would be a good question for Celia.
All right.
I'll note probably more than half the questions weren't ACCT questions, and we modified a number of them to improve the quality of the survey.
Okay. All right. The other question I have is, it was unclear to me whether the faculty and staff participants are compensated for their time on the council, and if so, I'm wondering if students are also compensated.
All groups are compensated except for administrators and managers.
Okay.
Although that compensation level varies considerably.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. It's kind of as it should be, I think.
Lisa?
So that was one of my questions. I'm glad to hear that students are compensated. Can you describe to me what the process is for changing a shared governance process? So I know the previous process took quite a long time and recommendations were made. What is the process for making changes to a shared governance, our shared governance system?
So when we've made changes in the past, like for the governance redesign team, we convened a group to talk about what problems we saw, and we made some recommendations and took them to campus and took their feedback and then brought a series of recommendations for how we change the governance system here. And then once those were adopted, we made a plan for how to operationalize those. I don't know that that's the only way you can change a governance process. I can only speak to what we've done previously.
And have you shared your recommendations with College Council and gotten feedback, or with the students, or I forget all of the diversity, infrastructure, faculty council, student success council?
I've not put these particular recommendations in front of them, no.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I've not put these particular recommendations in front of them.
So we don't have any feedback from stakeholders on them?
Not on these, no.
Okay.
Some of these, for instance, the co-chair model is one we've talked about at length at the last college council meeting. And although we ultimately opted not to go in that direction for next year, it's something that I'm expecting them to work on next year. Some of the others, like formalizing relationship, those are things that we've talked about in the governance steering committee, kind of the meta governance subcommittee of the system. So I'm not sure any of them would be a tremendous surprise, but no, the council system does not have an opportunity to provide feedback.
I could understand why someone who served as chair for the length of time that you have would encourage a co-chair model. I mean, it probably would be good to have someone to collaborate with.
Yeah, though we identified a lot of little things you don't think about at first at the last meeting of the year. I think it's the right move, but it's going to take a while to get there.
Let me add my thanks for your years of service on this topic, on this issue of shared governance. You called yourself the former chair. Has your successor already been elected or appointed?
Yep. At our last meeting, they elected Anna Scott for next year's chair.
You have the opportunity to work with that person.
We already had an 1.5 hour long meeting.
That's great. That's great.
Sure, will there be another one?
Thank you. Sincerely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Discussion item E, Mary Spildy Downtown Center, President Bolger.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Dr. Tinkham to come to the podium and help me with introducing the multiple parts of this particular item. We wanted to give the board information about what's happening currently in the Mary Spildy Downtown Center, and also wrap up with a visioning around the Mary Spildy Downtown Center to get the board's feedback. And so Dr. Tinkham will introduce the first two parts.
Absolutely. So I wanted to just to let you know that in November of 2022, President Bolger charged an advisory group of 25 stakeholders to provide a report with a description of the current activities in the downtown center, their alignment with college priorities and recommendations for the future. This report provided important information to President Bolger and team, including myself, who have been discussing a future vision for the center, which we are going to share this evening. But we also want to provide you with an overview of what's all the good work that's happening now. So then you have an overview of what we will be moving towards. I'm joined tonight by Dr. Anna Gates Tapia. She's the Dean of College and Career Foundations. That includes the Downtown Center. Dr. Gates Tapia will provide an overview of all the center activities and the descriptions of its services, its programs, and its activities. She will be the first speaker. The second speaker will be Dan Collins. He's the director of the Small Business Development Center, which is housed in the Downtown Center. And he will provide you with a more detailed look at just one of our services in the center, the Small Business Development Center. And with him, he has two clients, David Eccles and also Henrietta Knox. And then finally, Dr. Bolger is going to present the vision for the Downtown Center moving forward. So I will now invite Dr. Anna Gates Tapia to the podium.
Good evening. I'm Anna Gates Tapia. It's very nice to see you tonight. And as Dr. Tinkman said, I'm going to be providing an overview of the programs that are engaging in activities at the Mary Spildy Downtown Center. So the programs that, next slide, please. The programs that are operating at the Mary Spieldy Downtown Center, they served over 1,500 students this past year and community members through a variety of diverse academic and community service programs. And I'm going to be providing a very brief snapshot of each of those for you. So earlier this year, you had the opportunity to hear a detailed presentation about the fantastic work of the academic and tutoring services. And I'm happy to report that the services that they provide have been tailored for the needs of the students taking classes at our downtown center through things like one-on-one tutoring for college prep and GED students, ESL students, also tutoring for credit courses in math, writing, and social science, group tutoring and conversation practice for our ESL students, supporting students who are taking online and HyFlex classes with open labs to help them become familiar with the use of technology, small class group in-class support, as well as assistance to students making tutoring appointments at other centers. And through that work, they have provided more than 400 tutoring sessions downtown this past year. Next slide, please. Our adult basic and secondary education provides college preparation and GED preparation in subjects such as math, language arts, social science, and science. And this program offers courses both in the daytime and in the evening. And starting in the summer, almost all of the classes will have, again, in-person options available. Our ABSE program served over 600 students this past year. Next slide, please. Career Pathways also has a presence downtown, providing computer classes and academic skill development for certified nursing assistant students, as well as a care coach who provides holistic support and wraparound support during office hours downtown. Next slide, please. In 2023, the School of Arts and Sciences resumed offering Gen Ed classes downtown, courses in anthropology, human services, psychology, and writing were held. And what we find is that holding these types of classes downtown significantly reduces travel time and cost, especially for students who do not own vehicles and for those who are living and working downtown. Next slide. Our English as a Second Language program provides English language acquisition and college prep in subjects like reading and oral skills, writing and grammar, and healthcare professions. We also offer daytime and evening classes, with most of the classes having in-person options already available. This program served over 400 students last year, both resident and international students. Next slide, please. The Health Professions Health and Physical Education Division offered programs in massage therapy, CNA, medical reception, and pharmacy tech, and served over 100 students downtown last year. Next slide. Yes, thank you. One of our newer programs downtown is our Lane Child and Family Center, and they provide 6 hours per day of publicly funded daycare in the Preschool Promise program, and they offer this 5 days a week. In the evenings, they're also offering childcare for students taking classes downtown in the evenings, particularly for our ABSE and ESL students, allowing students who otherwise would not be able to take classes to participate in education. And this program serves between 14 and 20 students and their families. Next slide. Our senior companion program trains and mentors low-income seniors to become companions who then provide supportive services and companionship to disabled and isolated adults. In addition to that, they also offer educational opportunities to their volunteers and clients. This year, they had 19 volunteers and served over 500 community members. And last but not least, our Small Business Development Center. I'm not actually going to go into any details about this because my colleague Dan Collins is going to present that program in depth to you tonight. And so with that, I want to thank you, very short, very sweet, and open up for any questions you might have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah. Angela, were you gonna go? Go ahead. I was just gonna ask the rationale by which you all are deciding to locate programs downtown. My guess is everybody or lots and lots of folks might have some reason to be there, right? Less travel time, maybe it's a more interesting restaurants nearby. I mean, who knows? There's probably 100 reasons why people want to be downtown at least some of the time. And of course, we don't have space to probably meet all of the potential demand that's out there. So how are we deciding which programs are best suited to that location versus the main campus here?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I don't think I can necessarily speak to that fully, but I can speak to that for our adult basic and secondary and ESL programs, which are programs in my division. And essentially, these are populations that typically have high barriers. And one of those barriers is a transportation barrier. So the location next to the bus station makes it a very accessible location for these particular student populations.
Just a quick follow-up. I mean, that makes total sense. And I would, continue to support that we're I guess I just want to emphasize that I'm really hoping that we are locating programs downtown that have some particular need, whether it's through an equity lens or however it is that we might look at it as that they're going there for a reason other than, whatever they prefer it. But there's a particular barrier for that population that that location downtown somehow mitigates.
Angela.
Thank you for the presentation. So when I was reading the slides in advance, and again this evening, I keep wondering on the senior companion program, I observe, that it trains and mentors low-income seniors to become companions. Is that paid work? Does that increase their income?
It does. Yeah. Okay. Yes, it does. Yeah. They are compensated for their time in that.
Thank you.
And that is a grant funded program, by the way.
Nice.
Do you happen to know how long we've operated the senior companion program?
What I heard, it's at least 25 years in one form or another. It's a very long-term program that the college has been involved in.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any other hands up, so thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Bolger and Chair Pryor and members of the board. My name is Dan Collins and I am the director of the Lane Small Business Development Center. We're passing out some flyers for you to look at, and I'm going to do a short presentation and then we'll bring up a couple of our clients. And I believe that what they have to say will be more interesting than what I have to say. So I've been the director for the last 10 months and we'd like to say in the Small Business Development Center that small business is 60% of our local economy, but it's about 90% of everything that we love. That's why we love to live where we are. Big businesses are good. They're not bad. They provide necessary, dependable services. They provide goods and services, jobs and career tracks. But if you think about what you love about where you live, pizza shops, cafes, restaurants, dental and health services, your primary care physician, local manufacturing, specialty shops, tourism, hospitality, people that cut your hair, the people that help you buy, decorate, maintain, or sell your home, The list goes on and on. All that color and culture and things you love about where you live are almost all provided by small businesses. So Peter Drucker wrote, and we'll go to the next slide. Peter Drucker wrote, entrepreneurship is behavior rather than personality trait. Entrepreneurs are not risk focused, they are opportunity focused. So Drucker presses into this myth. There's a myth that entrepreneurs are born the way they are. However, research shows us that entrepreneurship is not based on a personality trait. It's rather a learned set of behaviors, which is really good for Lane Community College. Because this means that to be a successful employer, you can learn how to do that. And that's what we do as a college. We train people how to do what they do. And it's good for the Small Business Development Center because instead of filtering out people, are you born this way or not? We look to train the skills of how to run a business, how to start a business, how to grow a business, how to scale a business. And we train the workforce as part of Lane Community College with the core competencies they need. What we do as the Small Business Development Centers, we focus on the employers who provide jobs. So the Oregon Small Business Development Center was established 40 years ago. You have the flyer there. We're celebrating 40 years of economic development. And I don't know if you know this, but it was started at Lane Community College. We were the first one. We're celebrating 40 years of economic development this year. There are now 20 centers across Oregon, 26 satellite offices, connected to 17 community colleges and 2 state colleges. As part of a federal program, there's 1,000 across the US. Sometimes I say we're your tax dollars with a smile. We're also the non-credit side of the Lane Community College Business Department. We are part of Lane Community College. I say that everywhere I go, and I'm in all of our chambers of commerce. So I'm going to next slide, please. This is our team. We have 9 people on our team. We are an engaged and passionate group of people. We have 6 advisors. We have 1 faculty. We have 3 who are bilingual. We have a lead project coordinator, and we have a director, myself. 3 of us are bilingual, like I said, and 5 of our team are part-time. Everybody works very passionately. Here's how we do what we do. We do economic development by coaching entrepreneurs how to seize opportunities and solve problems all the way across Lane County, from Oak Ridge to Florence, from Junction City down to Cottage Grove. We advise business owners for free, and we give classes for a fee. It kind of rhymes, can stick in your head. But we are also, for Lane Community College, we're the outward facing and mobile arm of our college, as with some other departments, but we're one of the few that travels all across the county. There are 9 chambers of commerce. We have good relationships with 6 where we're actively involved. We will be establishing relationships with 3 others as we have more capacity. Currently, my team, and Denise McMorrin from my team is here right now, we are running full steam and loving the work that we do very much. Here's how we measure our performance. Next slide, please. These are our chambers of commerce where we are. Next slide, please. We measure our performance through economic development and FTE, which matters a lot to the college. So in 2022, you have some of our economic development statistics on a paper in that flyer. Just to mention a few, we worked with 483 businesses, providing over 1,000 hours of business coaching. We helped start 5 businesses, and from those 483 businesses, we helped create 88 new jobs. Supported 251 existing jobs. We saw 7.7 million in sales increases from those businesses, 2.8 million in capital infusion. Those are loans. Those are good numbers for 2022 coming out of COVID. However, our numbers are even better this year. For the first 5 months of 2023, we've now worked with 310 businesses, provided 700 hours of free business coaching, helped start 9 new businesses so far. And from those 310 businesses, we supported 608 jobs, helped create 16 new jobs. We've seen 2.1 million in capital infusion and 370,000 plus in sales increases. Those numbers will go up by the end of the year. Most of our reporting comes in September through December. So I want to emphasize just one thing, especially as you're looking at your budget, and this was not planned for tonight, but I think it's appropriate. We are a net profit or revenue producing program within Lane Community College. What that means is that for every dollar that Lane Community College puts into the SBDC right now, there's a 35% return on investment. That will hopefully make you smile as you look at your budget. Not every SBDC in Oregon operates this way, but it's because of the investment of Lane Community College over the last number of years in our personnel and our core services year after year and repeatedly, we have momentum and legacy programming and local impact, and it continues to generate more than we need. We are a net profit program. So for FTE, let me go through those numbers for you. Next slide, please. Our enrollments for our 10-week business planning program or our 3-year-long small business management tracks, plus a variety of small business topics, we're almost back to pre-COVID levels. In 2019, we were at 110 FTE. We dipped down to 43 in 2022, but we were back up to 109 in 2023. I like the trajectory. We're going to keep on growing. Next slide, please. Our funding comes from Lane Community College. Thank you very much. You fund 3 of our full-time positions. Half of our budget comes from Lane Community College. 2 principal grants come from Business Oregon, funded through the legislature and the Small Business Administration. Between those 2, it makes up a third of our budget. And then our program income and 1 local bank supports another 18% of our funding. So let me finish with a quote from Max Dupree. Next slide, please. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality, and the last is to say thank you. In between the 2, the leader must become a servant and a debtor. So thank you for leading Lane Community College with your leadership, supporting economic development through the Lane SBDC. Thank you for being the first community college to move in this direction 40 years ago. It's a privilege to serve Lane Community College and our county through this role. With that, let me pass it on to something more interesting and invite up David Eccles and Henrietta Knox, who run 2 different businesses, and they're some of our clients.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Bolger and members of the board. Thank you for having me here, and thank you, Dan, for inviting me. My name is Henrietta Knox. I run a counseling business here in Eugene, and I started in 2019. And in the fall of 2019, I joined the SBM program, and I was invited by alumni of the program. I was very excited, and I followed all 3 years of the program during the pandemic. That was quite hard. I started with 2 part-time employees in June of 2019. I currently have 55 employees,
Wow.
45 therapists. We have 3 locations, big one in Eugene, one in Albany, and one in Salem. We serve per month almost 1,000 Oregonians with mental health services. We serve people of all economic statuses and diversity groups, and we accept Oregon Health Plan. And we're just very excited to see everything we can do for Oregonians. And the SBM program has been essential in our business growth. Dan was talking to entrepreneurs. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I only went into the group practice because I wanted to help new therapists get licensed. And I have been able to help many, many therapists get licensed over the last 4 years. The program is so powerful because of the extensive knowledge that the coaches all have. There's a broad range of topics that is taught. The program is very affordable for small business owners. I think it's about $700 per year, which is extremely little compared to everything that the program offers in teaching, but also monthly individual coaching. There's great networking opportunities in the program for business owners, especially because there's a social aspect with dinners at the end of the year, which is a great way to network with other business owners. And I'm now an alumnus of the program, and I continue to receive support from the program. I can attend any class that I want, and I can continue to go to the networking events. So the program continues to give to my business and to help us grow and serve the community and create jobs, but also serve Oregonians with mental health services. Thank you for your attention.
Good evening, board. Thank you. Thank you for inviting Henrietta and I to this event tonight. Also, Dan, we really appreciate the opportunity. My name is David Eccles. My partner Keely Eccles and I started Sugar Mama's Baking in 2018, near the end of the year. And we, during the course of that time, of course, we also, as everybody knows, we went through the COVID virus. So there were opportunities for us to get involved with local small businesses like ourselves. We participated in markets. We got together during COVID to get creative about our solutions. We started offering online shopping markets, creating sort of miniature farmers markets, if you will. In the middle of all that, we also served victims of the forest fires at the Springfield High School Recovery Center. We provided meals through the city of Eugene for the homeless camps around the city during that time. And we developed a really great relationship with the city of Eugene and the city of Springfield. And our biggest accomplishments since then, besides being a food business and surviving COVID, we have expanded to be a weekly vendor at the Lane County Farmers Market. We've been attending festivals. We provide catering for weddings. Those are the things that brought us through to this point. And this year, we purchased an existing espresso shop in Springfield at the Albertson Shopping Center on Marcola. And that's been a fantastic next step for us. And, without the SBDC, and their guidance, it would have been a much bit greater struggle. Our advisor, Roger Wong, taught us how to do the accelerated business plan course. We signed up for that our first full year, and it was one of the best decisions we've ever made as far as our business is concerned. So I appreciate the community support and your support for all of those programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Board members, questions, Mike?
I'd just like to say that I've been a long time admirer of small businesses and entrepreneurs. They are what makes every community special and unique, provide jobs, provide services, and make the place special. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you, Dan, for the instruction that you provide.
Other board members, any questions, comments? Thank you all. Oh, Steve?
Sorry, well,
I was about to say thank you, and
Austin can go ahead, huh?
there it is. Austin?
Oh, and if you need a caterer for your retreat.
We have turned down, samples. Austin?
That makes me regret not being there. The work that the Small Business Development Center does, and it's one thing about training our workforce and creating a skilled and educated workforce, and it's another thing to help create small business owners and educate small business owners and help the development of our local communities and creating job creators for our students to eventually go into. So I really appreciate the work that the Small Business Development Center does. Thank you.
Steve, did you?
Really just echoing the compliments. So first off, thank you for your own, entrepreneurial mindset, your growth mindset. We need that at Lane, right? We're trying to grow ourselves out of a hole that we've got ourselves into. So appreciate your support with that. And then just wanted to say generally, every, month or two, there's a presentation that comes along that just makes me love this place all over again. And that was this one tonight. So thank you so much.
So you'll be interested to know that two different members of my family have a relationship with the SBDC. Many years ago, my husband wrote a marketing handbook that I understand is still in use at the Small Business Development Center. It was a workbook that he created years and years ago. And more recently, my oldest son, Matt, who graduated from the media production program in Lane and went to work for a television show in Springfield that's broadcast in 100 countries around the world, became very quickly the equivalent of their business manager. And his father and I said, you need to go to the SBDC. And he and his boss did exactly that. So thanks for all you're doing in our community. Thanks for being here tonight.
Chair Pryor.
Yes.
We have one more presentation.
I see
in
that.
this section. And we wanted to take just a few minutes and talk about the visioning around the Mary Fieldy Downtown Center. And you've had really great introductions to what's going on in the center in terms of programming and the SBDC. I'd like to take a few minutes to get your feedback on and input on the visioning around the Mary Fieldy Downtown Center. And so next slide, please. So this is the original background of the Spieldy Center. It was designed to take advantage of an available lot in downtown Eugene. Most of you know about this history much greater than I do. It was to create a new campus for LCC, expanding into an urban presence and introducing a significant amount of new student housing, which is the adjacent housing unit called Titan Court. This is the new vision for the Spieldy Center, which is to provide LCC international and domestic students and community members access to post-secondary education and training through remote college services, community education, non-credit programs, and partnerships. What's different about this particular vision is the remote college services. Currently, we don't have services in that building. Student services is what I'm referring to. And also in intentionality with respect to partnerships. And that's what's different about this particular vision. Next slide, please. The program mix, as you heard earlier, and I won't repeat this, but you can see the program mix there. It's very much consistent with what you heard. The last bullet, community partnerships, is really the intentionality that I was referring to. And I believe there's one more slide. Lease requirements, we do expect to continue to lease space in the Spieldy Center with respect to partnerships and intentionality around those partnerships. We'd like to have these additional requirements within those leases. The first one, aligning with the mission and the operations of the institution. And the second is to include the emergency communications of the college. It became very, very clear to us when we had the lockdown in February that including the second bullet in the lease requirements was going to be really important. And I believe that's the last slide. It is. So we would love to have any feedback. It's a very simple vision. It's a straightforward vision, and it includes just a couple of different elements, but in the spirit of intentionality and the strategic alignment is part of this focus. And I think that that's new.
Austin.
Overall, I look forward to any sort of community partnerships that we can develop with the Mary Spieldy Center. I know that certain four-year universities within the state of Oregon are looking for opportunities to have satellite campuses. And I would love to see like partnerships like that with another higher education institution. So anyway, but I do feel like there's numerous possibilities of community partnerships. Obviously, we've had that with the city. We've had that in other areas as well. So I feel like, yes, it's now part of the mission, but it's also like been there as part of the Mary Spieldy Center. So I look forward to opportunities of developing community partnerships at that center.
Mike.
It's my impression that at one time, it was our assessment that the Mary Spieldy Downtown Center was underutilized. And I don't have a sense right now where that stands, and if there's some kind of a timeline for if that's the case, more fully utilizing it.
It certainly is in transition now because we have some of the tenants who are transitioning in their operations and services. But I will turn this over to Mike to talk specifically about usage of the building, and maybe even Jennifer.
I think you're exactly right. It has been underutilized, and that was, but by design from previous administrations wanting to partner with the CML and use it as really a conference space for non-lane type conferences, and that led to some confusion among the lane folks that were down there as to what they could and couldn't do in that space. Currently we have the city of Eugene occupying I don't know if it's half, but it's a good chunk of the building. As you all know, assuming the deal goes through, and I just got an email from the assistant city manager telling me they have not signed the deal with eWeb yet. Very, very close. They'll be moving out and moving into the eWeb building, which will open up a lot more space. 4J is also down there with some of their programs. I just had a conversation with them 3 weeks ago or so. They want to stay and continue that partnership. They'll be moving around a little. They're kind of right now, they're sort of all over the place, and we're going to kind of try to consolidate them a little bit on the 4th floor. And then the Eugene Police Department also has got sort of a community policing plan that they want to have a little bit more space. And so it may be that they expand their footprint in our building, which I don't know if you even know this, but you can only get into the police department if you go down to that one door that doesn't really go into our building. It's a separate space. Well, they will be in our building with access into the building from inside if this goes forward. So those are just a couple. I don't know if you want me to go. Yeah, I'll stop there. But there are some others that we're looking at. So yeah. And Jennifer, you got anything else? Okay.
Steve?
Yeah, you said that there was 181,000 square feet, right, in the Mary Spildey Center, and I assume that doesn't include Titan Court. That's just the Mary Spildey Center. Can you give us a sense of the percent of that that's used by LCC and the percent that's leased to these other organizations you're mentioning? And if we have some goal there, are we thinking along those lines?
I have those exact numbers, but not with me. Would it be okay if I sent that?
Yeah, follow-up's fine. I don't need to know right here now.
Okay, yeah, I can tell you exactly what everybody that's in there currently has, and you'll get a sense from that.
Just to follow up a second. So we have a sense of at least the LCC sort of the portfolio in there, and then some sense, but not maybe a complete sense of those organizations that are leasing space. I'm always going to ask some financial questions. To what extent are we recovering our total O&M costs, including whatever debt? I don't know if we have any remaining debt there, those leases, and do we have goals, in terms of establishing some portfolio mix of our own folks and leasing? What are we trying to achieve? I don't expect you to answer it right now, but it'd be good stuff to know going forward.
We'd like to bring that back, and we can certainly talk about the competitive market rate because we have looked at that in terms of the cost of our leases. But we could also bring some of those questions back, and we'll give you a fuller response.
Yeah, last thing I'll just say, just me, I don't know what the other board members think, but again, we're constantly trying to look for opportunities to improve our financial position. So I'll just put it out there. If we can improve it to some extent through leases at LCC, I think that ought to be through leases at Mary Spildey Center. I think that ought to be on the table.
Austin and then Lisa.
Yeah, we've had a presentation on this before in the past of leases, how much income that's coming in. And I do want to thank the previous president for entrepreneurial kind of mindset around that in regards to getting these leases set up and so forth. So yeah, it was my question was in regards to, I know we're doing a spatial usage survey on the main campus, and I was wondering if we're doing that same thing at the Mary Spildey Center, or if that's included in that, or are we just mostly focusing on the main campus for the spatial? I forget the exact title of the survey, but it was something as a spatial usage survey or something like that.
Jennifer, would you like to address that?
Space utilization study, and yes, Mary Spildey Center, Florence, and Cottage Grove are all included.
Fantastic, cool. And I know that with that survey, does that survey also include recommendations of where programs could potentially be shifted if necessary?
It may. We're going to be working with the consultant and a steering committee, so we'll figure that out.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah.
Lisa.
Thank you. I appreciated the questions that Steve made and the comments about the capacity that we have to generate income from the Mary Spildey Center. And I do hope that will be part of the process going forward. So you asked about feedback on these lease requirements. I really appreciate that you've added aligning with the mission and operations of the college. I think that's really important. Even though I think it has been a really good kind of interim step to have the city there, the revenue that we came from that. And I have to say, I loved having the city there. It was fun going down to meetings and being in the building. But I would like to see that building buzzing with the mission and vision of this college. And I do think that we can do that through a synthesis of our own programs and through intentional partnerships like the president is suggesting. And so I'm excited to see that and to see that combination. I will say that I have had a chance to go into the childcare program there. And I do know some people who've had the opportunity to utilize it. And I think we have had other conversations about the significant need for childcare and the impact that that has on our economy. And if there were an opportunity to expand childcare services down there, I would be supportive of that, especially if it was also an opportunity to provide some type of clinical educational experience for our own programs in addition to generating revenue. So.
Very good. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
We have reached the last discussion item on the agenda, President Bolger.
Yes, I'd be happy to take this item, and I want to go to the podium for this. It's ceremonial. Members of the board, this evening we gather to express our heartfelt appreciation and recognize the outstanding contributions of our outgoing board members. Angela Van Kraus, Holly Johnson, and Rosie Pryor. Their unwavering commitment to our mission and their strategic guidance have shaped our organization and have positioned us for continued growth and impact. Through their visionary thinking, they have chartered a course for us to navigate through challenges and seize opportunities, setting the stage for a brighter future. Each of them has brought a unique set of skills, experience, and perspectives to the table, enriching our decision-making processes and broadening our horizons. Their dedication to excellence, their integrity, and their unwavering commitment to the values we hold dear have been truly inspiring. We have witnessed their efforts to strengthen our organization's governance, ensuring that it operates with transparency, accountability, and ethical standards of the highest order. Their counsel and guidance have been invaluable, providing a steady hand during times of change and uncertainty. We recognize the countless hours our departing board members have invested in Lane, often going above and beyond their expected responsibilities. Today, as we bid farewell to these three outstanding individuals, we express our deepest gratitude for their service. On behalf of Lane Community College, I extend our heartfelt thanks to each outgoing board member. Although your formal tenure on the board has come to an end, your influence will endure. We wish you continued success and fulfillment in all your future endeavors, knowing that you will continue to make a positive impact in the lives of others. Thank you for your exceptional service and for leaving an indelible mark on Lane's history. So please join me in a well-deserved round of applause to Angela, Holly, and Rosie. We have gifts for you, and they're being passed out now.
And
One of
I'm
them,
almost no longer an elected official, so whatever it is, I can accept it. Thank you.
we've been mindful of the dollar limit. One of the gifts I just want to mention is, and you may want to hold it up just so that individuals can see it. It's a pretty famous print here at Lane Community College. It's called The Road to Lane. And it's really, really quite beautiful. It looks to me like a watercolor. I think we may have the original. It looks like a watercolor and it's really, really quite beautiful. So we wanted to give this to you. And then in your bag, there is a little plaque and it's got your name on it. And it's just a commemorative item for us in our deepest appreciation for you and all that you do. And I don't know if the other board members might want to say something, but that's the end of our gifts at this point.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Sure. So I'll start with Angela. Angela, I remember going to your campaign kickoff and we actually were both first elected together in that cycle. I was appointed previous to that, but we first were elected together. And I keep thinking like, what are we going to do with policies after Angela leaves? And I promise you, I will do my best to challenge your channel your analytical mind in terms of the policies. And Angela's already said I can contact her if I need help. So Holly, I'm gonna miss you so much, girlfriend. I've had so many laughs with you and just appreciated the time that we've gotten together. I feel like I gained a friend as well as a colleague, and I appreciate your commitment to saying the hard things and reminding us to stay on track when it comes to serving all students. So thank you for that. And Rosie, I'm gonna miss your leadership so much, and I have just learned so much from you. And getting to serve 2 years with you as my vice chair, I couldn't have done that through the pandemic without you. And I really appreciate all the mentoring that you gave to me during that time. I really grew tremendously as an elected official through your coaching. So thank you very much.
Mutual. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to throw their 2 cents worth out there?
I would just like to say to Angela and Holly in particular that each of you in your own way have made unique contributions. You've raised things that I think probably would not have been raised were you not here, that were really valuable and important to the board. And Rosie, thank you for your steadfast, steady, and persevering leadership over the years.
Thank you. Austin, Steve?
One of my favorite statements that Michael Blade says is that Angela Van Kraus read the policy and pointed out things that I did not see. And so Angela, it's incredible, the policy analysis and the recommendations and just your focus on the policies it's been extraordinary. And I just want to say that I'm really going to miss the feedback that you give in regards to policies as we go through them and as we went through so many policies together. Holly, my parents watch these board meetings on a regular, and you are by far my parents' favorite board member.
That includes you, I take it.
Oh dear. Yeah. Oh dear.
Still their favorite board members. And Rosie, your dedication to community colleges and your family's dedication and history with community colleges was really inspiring to me. And your work on the bond and getting that bond passed back in 2020 during a pandemic, your leadership in that and your steadfastness and your talking to voters and businesses during that very tumultuous time period was very inspiring, and that bond would not have passed without your leadership. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Austin. Steve?
Yeah, I'll just chime in briefly and in the same order that others took them. So I don't want to belabor the policies thing too much, but I too have leaned on you heavily for your policy review and honestly checked out of some of that because I knew you were looking after it. So now I'll have to check back in with 7,000 to go, apparently. So in any case, the other thing, of course, I really wanted to call out, Angela, is your commitment to, to equity. I've learned a lot from you, not just that we're doing it, but it's the way in which that you bring up the issues. It's persuasive, and that's what we're here for in terms of, as a board, to persuade each other's, and you have frequently persuaded me, including tonight. So thank you for those for all that perspective. Holly, I remember when I saw your picture on the front cover of the Eugene Weekly, when you were maybe it was when you were running or after you won. I don't remember right now, but I was like, whoa, I got to meet this person. You have been quiet, honestly, right? Many of the times during the meetings, but when you speak up, it's often for, the little guys, so to speak. It's often also for equity purposes, and we listen. And so that has been valuable. Others have pointed that out as well. So, I wished I could have had more time to get to know you better, quite honestly. And Rosie, your leadership is just incredible, right? You've led this organization for many years, not just the last 2 that I have been here. I have learned a lot this past year watching you return to the board chair role, and you have steered us with conviction, including just a couple of weeks ago with a letter to the legislature and beyond. And lo and behold, a week later, everybody comes back and we have our budget. So, and I think that's due to you. So so thank you for that, and your steadfast commitment to students, and the constant reminder that at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. And despite, significant and tough decisions that we have to make, that's where we have to keep our focus. You remind us of that all the time. And you are so articulate. And I really appreciate that as well.
And I think perhaps giving each of you an opportunity to say something if you would like to.
Holly?
Well, yes, I would love to say something. First, I just have to say the honor is all mine. I am just thankful for the opportunity to have served on this board. It's been amazing. Each of you have contributed to everything that I have grown to become after serving on this board. But Lisa and Greg Evans and people who asked me to run or prompted me to run. When I got appointed, it was just like, wow. And then the learning started. And so for all of those who were involved in the trainings and my confidant here and the person I had to always run to, Lisa, thank you so much for your guidance. But there's just so many more people. This whole community just really was an outpouring of support for me. And so I'm happy that it all came to fruition. And I'll be back in some capacity, in some way. This won't be the end of my service, but I truly have enjoyed the service and to this whole community. We all have a lot of work to do, going forward and for the new members. But I trust that under your leadership, Dr. Bolger, that you guys are going to do well. It's going to be some courageous conversations. But I wish everybody just well in these next few conversations after your retreat. But other than that, I'm just so thankful. There's so many more people outside of this room that I have to be thankful for, like Skylar and, Matt Keating. And, there's so many people, and Emily Kaiser and Austin and everybody who was there, in the parking lot conversations, Steve, Angela, all the conversations and that we've had. I'm going to really miss time at your house, Rosie. Having dining out there was nice. But anyway, I had a great time. For the record, I would say no to closing the health center if I was still around, because of the outpouring of support is just a vital resource on campus for our students. So that's just for the record. But other than that, Johnson out. Thank you.
Angela?
I'd better go next because you will be far more articulate and I don't want to follow you. So I'll just say thank you to the voters for electing me, of course. These last 4 years have been really incredible. Thank you to everyone on campus who's helped train me, who's given me all the resources I needed to be an effective board member. I really appreciate that. Like many people here, I am a success story of LCC. I turned up in Oregon I actually didn't have an associate's degree. I never filed that piece of paper. So I turned up with associate's level of education, but I couldn't get into the University of Oregon because I didn't have a math class. So I came to LCC and I took a math class. And without that math class, without Dale Green, I wouldn't have gotten a math degree. And getting the math degree is the reason that I ended up being an analyst. And as a healthcare analyst, I work to improve health outcomes, largely for the most marginalized folks in our community. So LCC has made a huge difference. And I'm just super appreciative of that. And on a slightly more serious note, I would like to just remind us that all of our institutions, even the ones that are the most beloved to us, are built on systems of oppression. And those systems do not require your active participation to continue and to flourish. All they require is that you don't read the policies and you pass them along. So I really want to encourage this board to take the equity lens and to use it going forward. And I think I had more things to say, but I can't remember them. So I'll pass it off to Rosie. Thank you so much.
So Holly and, and Angela, I shared my thanks and my love for them privately. So I just want to say that it's really true. My connection to community colleges in Oregon goes literally all the way back to the start of the movement in Oregon. And I frankly never imagined serving on a community college board. And I'm just grateful that the inspiration came. There was someone that I wanted to get to know better at the time and learn from, Mary Spildy. And that's what motivated me to run 12 years ago. And I've had the opportunity to meet so many different extraordinary people as a result of participating on the board. And I've learned from every one of you and every one of them, and have become so clear about all the miracles that happen out here every single day. It's just amazing. They've happened to people in my own family. I'm grateful for Lane. It really is a treasure in our community. And I'm so grateful that there are 3 more people who are prepared to step up and roll up their sleeves and take on the challenges and make sure Lane is here for another 50 years. I'm grateful to all of you for all of your contributions. We're really lucky. We're just really lucky that the worst we can say about Lane is we've got some fiscal challenges. We can fix that. It's fixable. So thank you kindly for the lovely, I understand this is called the Road to Lane. So it's pretty, it will have a special place in our home. So thank you, everyone. Thank you all. Very kind.
And thank you.
So we are going to adjourn this meeting, and I asked the board members to remain. You can have a bio break. We will convene in an executive session at 8:25 here in this room. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you. Just to clarify, we stay on this Zoom call, right?
I'm sorry?
We stay on Zoom call?
It's a different number.
Oh, gotcha. It's the.
You should have an email with the sign on for the executive session.
On that right now.